Oh, it is Diane with Diane's Blue Hearts and Butterflies.com, and our latest class we wanted to work on some man cards because June is Father's Day. So I made it so that the cards could be either Father's Day or a birthday, but they were more geared toward men. And this idea I saw on Pinterest and I fell in love with it, and it was cased from Tammy Hewlett. So let's go over the cards. Just remember that you can go to my blog at Diane's Blue Hearts and Butterflies.com and be able to get the recipe or the dimensions for these pieces there. So if you miss something, don't forget to check over there. We do need a card base, and I used the thick white, and this is 5.5 by 8.5. And you score this in half at 4 1/4 in landscape. I'm using the In Good Taste Designer Series paper, which has a lot of really great textiles and fibers and other types of wood grains and background images. And this is the whitewash background image, one of them that is in there. And this is 4 by 5 1/4. And it'll fit on the front. I'm also using some dies that are retired. Let me go over those real quick. The oval that I am using, I did use with my layering ovals. This is now retired. So I hope that you've got this in your stash. If not, maybe you can find something else that would be equivalent. And I'm using the largest of the ovals, and I cut another piece of the kind of planks background from this In Good Taste Designer Series paper to go on here. I also used the word happy for this card out of my old Merry Christmas to All, but I did find in the catalog there is this word wishes, and it does have the word happy in there as well as many other words that you could die cut out. And so I would encourage, if you don't have this older set, to go ahead and invest in that word wishes for that one. My piece that I used for this part of the words, I did use the rectangle stitched dies, and I used the longest skinny small one for cutting that out after I stamped this in Versamark and embossed it in white embossing powder, and then I just kind of cut a flag in it. So that is another die that I use. There's a lot of dies. I wanted to be able to show the class that sometimes you can create a visual interest with just using the dies and not many of the stamps. The Forever Flourishing, this one came with the Forever Fern stamp set and dies bundle. I used the branch out of here. The one that she had used on hers, I think, came out of In the Woods, which is a retired set. I do happen to have that, but I wanted to try using one that was in a current set. I also used some words out of one of my paper pumpkins. These are really great to keep around, and the inserts for these, I did find Stamp Your Art Out. She has kept a whole entire page dedicated to the paper pumpkin inserts, and I'm very grateful to her for that, so that I was able to go on and print these off for the ones that I do have, so that I could actually use those more than just with the kits. I also, the kind of star of this whole thing is the Mountain Air set, and it comes with the Majestic Mountain die, or the bundle did. I don't believe it's bundled in the new catalog, but you can still get the dies that go with this stamp set. This is also a special stamp set in that it's double-sided, so that on one side of the stamp it gives you this kind of background image, which is shown up in gray, and then you flip it over and the detailed side is on this other side of the stamp, which gives the detail. And they have also the trees, and then the other trees, the moon, the clouds, and the birds also create another small cloud. But I'm going to be using actually both sides to show you this on this card. So these are the products that I did use, along with the braided linen trim. I wanted to use several different kind of textures and fibers to create this card. I did get a scrap of the early espresso, the crumb cake, another small strip of the early espresso that I could stamp the embossed sentiment on. Again, here's the die cut that I cut out for the word happy, the die cut for the detailed tree, the real tall one, and then also this branch that I had cut out of the white. So let's kind of put these aside. I did want to kind of show how I had stamped these and some tips too. So on this mountain, what Tammy had done, I went over and looked at her blog where she was showing, and the early espresso creates the background of it, and then she used the Whisper White pigment ink. This is a very sticky, thick type ink that really great for working on darker colored cardstocks. It's super great for the chalkboard type images. And you're using the detailed part of this stamp. You'll be able to tell because the back side is very smooth and the detailed side has the little grooves and image portions. So she just took and inked this up in the white pigment ink. And again, you don't want to press into your ink pads because it oozes the ink everywhere, gets it down into some of the grooves that you're actually wanting to try to keep from getting ink into, and it also makes it very messy for cleanup. So you just want to tap the top of the ink pad, which is why Stampin' Up! All of their ink pads flip over so that they store and the ink comes to the top of the ink pad. Now this, she just stamped directly, before I get any further, it's always great with these photopolymer stamps to use your Stampin' Pad Pierce mat, and it gives it that oomph that it needs to create a better image. And you basically just want to press down. You don't want to be rocking, you just want to press down, and then you want to lift straight up, and then it just creates that image there. And then she just took the outline die from the mountains and she die cut that out using the Stampin' Emboss cut machine. And then with this, I would strongly urge and recommend either a wet rag, a wet towel, some wet wipes to clean off the white sticky ink before you use it on your stamp chamois or your Stampin' Scrub, whichever, to do the final cleaning, to get most of it off with the wet wipes and stuff, because it is really thick and sticky and it will get all over the other cleaners that you might use. So I would recommend a wet wipe, preferably, because you could throw it away, or at least a wet rag so that you won't have to have that all over your stamp chamois. And then you could bring in your stamp chamois to just kind of clean off any of the excess oily type stuff and have that. So that is that portion. So I'm going to set that aside. Also on the inside of the card, I actually created these images using the stamps. So I wanted to show you a little bit how I did that. And I've already gotten some of this stuff prepared. So I used the Memento Tuxedo Black, Crumb Cake, and Early Espresso for this card. And my crumb cake, they were getting a little dry, so I actually inked them up before class, but I forgot to mention to some of the ladies, and right after you've inked them up, they can be a little bit dark, so they weren't quite used to that, and it ended up stamping a little darker than they wanted. So what I would recommend is, after you've inked up your stamps, is that you actually stamp off and then stamp on your area that you're wanting that, so that it's a little bit lighter of a background. You can kind of see the difference between the dark, really inked up, and then the lighter portion. And I did the crumb cake for the background of this, and then I used the Early Espresso for the detailed portion. And so I am going to ink up now the detailed part. And again, you're just tapping across the top. You're not trying to get it down into the grooves and everything and get it really messy. Now the shadow does not line up with the detail, so you just kind of line it up where you want it. That kind of covers some of this, and some of these mountains will look like they are offset, so it'll look like they're kind of a different layer of mountain. And then I took the Memento Black, and that's what I also did on this little piece for the front. I took the double trees in the stamp set for the one on front, and I just stamped that using the Tuxedo Black and stamped that on to my scrap of crumb cake. And then I die cut that out with the dies that cut this piece. And then for the inside, I just took the single tree. Oops, sorry about that. There's also a single tree that's in there because I wanted to be able to create several different mountains. And as you can see, I kind of have a little mess up there. I'm gonna fix that. There's always kind of a way that you can come up with a way of fixing some of these boo-boos, and one of them is stamping something else over it. So I just wanted to kind of create these trees in varying layers kind of towards the front, but I didn't necessarily want the two trees because one was so much shorter, and I wanted to be able to vary the size of the trees on my own. So that's what I did there. And then in this same stamp set, there's this little grouping of 3 birds. And so where I had the little mess up, and I did this on another one to hide it, that's where I just stamped my birds, and nobody would ever really know that I was trying to hide something. So I just kind of stamped those in various little places, and then you could stamp your inside sentiment as well. Now let me put these inks away, and I'll just show you really quickly how I put that card together. And so, oh, I'll pull these things out. So on here, oh, I was going to show also the, I'm sure that everyone is familiar with heat embossing, and so I didn't want to take time to do that, but it is with Versamark, and then you just emboss that with white embossing powder. Now on the linen thread, I just cut a small piece, and then I just took and undid the weave on kind of one side towards the middle, And then after I got that mostly done towards the middle, I then took and tied my knot, and then I unbraided and unwound the other side or the other end. So it kind of held it together for me to make my knot, instead of trying to unwind all of these or to use linen thread and then try to tie a knot with several strands. I just left it like this so that I could then use this side that is still weaved together to tie my knot, and I pulled it over and tied it so that it was on the strands and not on the weave. And then I just took the other side and did the same thing as undoing the weave, and I ended up with this little kind of knot with some fibers, and that's what I wanted to be able to show you. Now, the other thing on here is that this tree, depending on where you want to place it, may be too long, so you may need to cut that down. This one will definitely need to be cut down to be able to put that on here where you might want it. And you can use any type of glue that you want, glue dots, dimensionals, glue runners that you want. I do like the Stampin' Seal Plus for putting things together. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere this front piece I like the Seal Plus because it kind of has some little grooves cut in the glue runner part, and makes it easier for breaking it off and being able to stop where I want it to. And then I took the oval It's also nice if you do go over the edge, you can kind of take that little piece and fold it back over. And this one I just kind of lined up in the middle. And right now I'm just gluing everything straight down. Sometimes when you have too much dimension on a card and you're going to be mailing it, it actually can cost a lot more money because it's too thick. So you want to be aware of the thickness of your cards if you're going to be mailing them. And this one I thought we could do the card, most of it with things that are straight down on the front. So I'm going to put this kind of right here. And then the big tree, I think this one will fit all of it. I am going to use the Tombow liquid glue on just strategically. Oh, and of course today is going to be the day that it's going to run. It has been super hot here in Nevada, and so I had that stored upside down and it's really runny. So probably just need to use it before. I'm just going to stick it in a few little places, kind of dotting it around, because you don't really want it to be too much or else it will ooze out all over the place and get really sticky on the card. So I'm going to try not to squish it too much because I really don't want it to run. Let me clean that off. Good use for the wet wipe that we had too. Alright, so there is that piece. And then I'm going to go ahead and chop off some of these pieces as well, because I'm going to hide it behind the double set of trees that's going to go on the front. And that's one great thing too, that people that receive the cards generally don't have an idea of what you were looking at, maybe when you were trying to make a card for them, and so they're not going to be judging you on if it looks close to what you were copying from or casing from or just using as an idea. And so you can be a little creative on your own. You do want to make sure that it doesn't hang down beyond your card down here though, because then it will get caught on the in the envelope, or on the envelope. So now with the double trees, I did decide to go ahead and use some dimensionals. Let me wipe up some of that glue that I wiped off. And stick some of these dimensionals around. Alright. And get those off my fingers. Now I can kind of line this up to hide those ends, and nobody will ever know. There. Now, you could use a square punch or a banner punch, but there's also a way you can just use your snips or your scissors to create a pennant, and that is to go straight from a side into the middle as far as you want to go in, and then you go from each of the outside corners to where that inside slit that you made goes, and they meet together, and you can create that little pennant there. And this one, I'm going to grab some mini dimensionals and go across a few of them across here. To pop this up to match those trees. I'm kind of just putting it off to the side. And then again with the word happy that I die cut out, I'm just going to use a little bit of the Tombow glue, little bits here and there. And I'll just turn that over, kind of overlap it where you would like. So this one is a happy birthday card, and I can add a sentiment now or later when I'm ready to give the card, so I know who I'm giving it to. And it just makes for a very fun, quick card. Once you've got everything all die cut anyway, it goes fairly quickly if you wanted to make a bunch of these. And so this is one of the cards that we made using featuring the Mountain Air stamp set and dies, which I really and truly fell in love with when I saw them in the catalog for the first time. Now I am going to add this little knot with a mini glue dot. I just kind of roll it back behind there, and then I'm just going to add it kind of off to the side of this little label, and it just gives it some more little dimension. So I hope that you enjoyed this quick and easy card using the Mountain Air stamp set, and that you'll check out my blog at dianesblueheartsandbutterflies.com. There's a link there that you can shop on my online store to be able to get these products and make these cards yourself. Thank you.